I do a lot of lag testing here on RetroRGB, and recently I've even demonstrated audio lag from emulation consoles such as the Genesis Mini. In order to run these tests properly, you need to make sure that your capture card doesn't add any delay by itself, and since I always like to show my work and encourage other people to do the same, I wanted to do a very quick video on how to audio lag test your capture card. As soon as I released the Genesis Mini lag test video, I immediately got a few comments from people wondering if my capture card was the cause of some of this variable audio delay, and not the Genesis Mini itself, or at least not as bad as I thought in the video. So I thought I would take a moment to explain the differences between the different types of delay that you'll run into when using capture cards, and how I was able to apply it to that video to get a rating that I think is accurate within 1 or 2 frames, and considering there was a 3 to 4 frame audio lag difference in that Genesis Mini console, that's still quite a significant delay, and even something that you would be able to hear with your own ears without needing to slow things down to see the difference. So I think I'm just going to start by going through the basics for capture cards and what to expect when you're capturing video or just talking to the camera like this. I guess I'd like to touch upon what kinds of audio delay that you'll find when recording first, because I think there's also a bit of a confusion as to which types of audio delay people run into. The first, of course, is something like talking into this camera. At the moment, I have my camera going through a capture card into my computer, and then I have the microphone going into a different audio card going into the computer as well, all being recorded in OBS. So the way I calibrate that audio delay is very simply by doing a clap test. Then I slow that down to about 10%, or whatever your audio video editing software can go down to without losing audio. And then I kind of line it up to see exactly how much delay there is and use OBS to compensate for that. So that way when I hit record, the delay is already compensated for and I have a file that's already perfectly synced up. So that's about as easy as it can get, and to be honest, that's what applies to most of the capture card testing when you're talking about things like what I did in the Genesis Mini video. One type of audio lag that you'll find is where the audio and video drift apart over a long period of time, and I don't think there is a really good solution for that. This is predominantly for people who record long plays or do long streams that are at least over a half hour long, and that's probably something that's better suited to a streaming expert like Epos Vox. So please check out his channel. I'm a giant fan, and he could probably clear all of that up. But what I'm talking about is just basic delay in your capture card when you're recording snippets, not audio that drifts over time. So the way that I did the audio recording for the Mickey Mouse section is just by hitting record using a program called Amarek. So it's the same software and the same hardware through this Epiphan DVI to USB 3.0 capture card. Now, I'm assuming that because the same piece of hardware is doing audio and video, that probably has something to do with it, as well as the latency of the audio hardware itself. But anyway, now that you have your whole setup ready, all you have to do is take the captures and make sure you're in 60 frames per second mode when you're capturing. I think for audio delay, and especially something where you're only talking about a few seconds of recording, you don't have to worry so much about 59.94 or some of the consoles that are 60.01. I think just a straight up 60 frames per second should be good enough. Then gather those files, make sure there's no anomalies, and get yourself a baseline reading. Then the way to test the capture card to make sure that that in itself is accurate is simply to take a camera running at 60 frames per second and take a video of the same exact test. Now, of course, CRTs are always going to be better for something like this because there's zero lag, but if you have a flat panel that only adds a few milliseconds of lag, it won't be off by too much, and in my opinion, I don't think it would be off enough to skew audio delay results. Because generally speaking, when we complain about things like that, we're not talking about half a frame off, we're talking about things like the Genesis Mini that could be as high as 7 frames of delay, which is pretty noticeable to the human ear even without slowing it down. So just follow the same exact procedure. Take any kind of camera or even your cell phone at 60 frames per second. I of course always recommend mounting it to a tripod because you don't want anything else messing with the signal. Turn the volume up and run the same exact tests. Then just slow it down and it should match up exactly as you see here. I did exactly what I just described and everything seems to line up exactly as it did with the capture card. So once again, I'm not trying to say that the Epiphan capture card is flawless for audio. I'm just saying that in all of the tests that I've run for the short snippets of audio delay, it's been rock solid. So maybe that would be something to look into if you're having audio delay issues, but I didn't test it for long periods of time, usually no more than 4 or 5 minutes. After that though, the only other thing that you could say is, what if your camera has latency between the audio and video? And at that point, I would have to just say you could test that yourself, but you would definitely hear about that if there were any bugs in it, especially if you're using any of the top-selling smartphones. Because let's face it, if you had something like a brand new flagship iPhone and it had audio and video delay or drift in the sync between them, it would be all over every tech blog and people would be complaining like crazy. So generally speaking, if you're using a camera without any external equipment attached, just have it up on your tripod and pointed right at the screen, you should be fine and there shouldn't be any other variables. Of course, just use common sense and anything like that. You don't want to put it through a surround sound system that might have some automatic delay correction. Just use basic speakers or the speakers built into your TV and all that stuff. But generally speaking, that's a great way to test it. And if any one of your results is completely off from the other or changes every time, just look into your setup and see if there's anything else that could affect it. But generally speaking, I'm pretty solid with my setup, so if I do audio delay, while I do double check, I'm always pretty confident that my results are within half a frame of correct. And once again, all of the times I've complained has been many frames different, so I'm certainly not nitpicking over half a frame of audio emulation delay. Well, that was just a rundown on how I test my test equipment, and I guess a peek on how I verify my findings and make sure that I'm not just spewing out words in these videos and I actually have solid data to back them up. I really encourage anybody that's interested in this stuff to try these things, both because it's really cool to learn for yourself and because the more people we have doing these solid measurements and posting them online, the more bigger companies are going to think twice about releasing things like the Genesis Mini that has such bad audio delay. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, please consider signing up for any of the support services like Subscribestar or Patreon, and check out the weekly podcast I do that keeps everybody in the loop of everything going on in the retro gaming scene. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.